The Theory of Credit by Henry Dunning MacLeod. Preface. I have found it necessary to enlarge this volume very considerably. When some years ago a movement was started to abolish our present system of coinage, the most perfect and successful ever devised by the ingenuity of man, and to restore the old bimetallic system, which, after having been vainly attempted to be maintained for 500 years, had been finally abandoned as hopeless, impractical, and injurious. It seemed so contrary to demonstrated science that most persons thought it was not worth any attention. But such is no longer the case. This movement has had such an unexpected extension and met with such wide support from numerous and influential persons in nearly every country that it can no longer be neglected. There is no graver and more momentous economic question at the present day, nor one which is at the present time being more hotly discussed throughout the world. I have therefore found it necessary to give the whole subject of the coinage much greater prominence than it received in the previous edition. I have given a chapter to explain the general principles of the coinage, and also one specially to bimetallism. The gradual adoption by most of the European states of a single gold standard, coined in unlimited quantity and made legal tender to any amount, with coins of other metals, such as silver, strictly limited in quantity, and made only subsidiary to the standard unit, which is termed monometallism, is one of the most important economic events of the 19th century. But comparatively few, even of the persons who acquiesce in this system as being established and successful, are fully informed of the historical facts and arguments on which it is founded. The purpose of this chapter is to give a succinct but sufficiently full account of the indubitable historical facts and the incontrivable arguments which a long series of illustrious men during 5 centuries have based upon these facts, upon which the modern system of monometallism is founded, and to examine whether the bimetallists have brought forward any sound reasons for invalidating them and reverting to the former system. The whole of this vast controversy is reducible to a single, simple, and definite issue. Supposing that gold and silver are coined in unlimited quantities and a fixed legal ratio is enacted between them, 1. Is it the legal fixed ratio enacted between the coins which governs the relative value of the metals in bullion? 2. Or is it the relative value of the metals in bullion which governs the relative value of the coins? 3. And if it be found impossible for any single state to maintain gold and silver coined in unlimited quantities in circulation at a fixed legal ratio, is it possible for any number of states combined to do so by an international agreement? This is the whole gist of the controversy, and all facts and arguments adduced must be directed to establish one or other of these points. All descriptions, however long or however true, of the unfortunate state of commerce at the present time are utterly irrelevant and beside the question, and must at once be dismissed from consideration. This issue, which is the sole point in the case, is not to be determined by assertions evolved out of the inner consciousness of any persons, however numerous and influential, but by a strict investigation of the history of the coinage in different countries, and by solid arguments formed on the observation of these facts. I have given succinct, but I hope sufficient, notices of the attempt to maintain bimetallism in England and France for 500 years, and its total failure and final abandonment in these countries. In both countries, it was attempted to maintain unlimited quantities of gold and silver in circulation at a fixed legal ratio, but it totally failed. Oresme in France, Copernicus in Poland, and Gresham in England demonstrated that the relative value of the metals in bullion governs the relative value of the coins, and that if the fixed legal ratio between the coins differs from the market or natural value of the metals in bullion, the coin which is underrated invariably disappears from circulation, and the coin which is overrated alone remains current. As it was, however, found to be impossible to be constantly adjusting the fixed legal ratio of the coins to the perpetually varying value of the metals, Petty, Locke, and Harris demonstrated that the true remedy was to adopt one metal only as the standard unit, and to issue coins of other metals only as subsidiary to the standard unit. This doctrine was enforced in a masterly treatise by Lord Liverpool in 1805, was entirely approved of by the Governor General of India in Council in 1806, and was finally established by law at the Great Recoinage of 1816. And ever since then, England has enjoyed the most perfect system of coinage ever devised by the ingenuity of man, and has been perfectly free of all coinage troubles. I am fortunate in being able to bring before my readers an experience which is wholly novel to the general public and is of overwhelming weight. Mr. Robert Chalmers of the Treasury, author of a very useful history of colonial currencies, informed me that the Governor General of India in Council had issued a most important minute in bimetallism in 1806. Upon making application to the India office, I was at once most courteously permitted to take a copy of this minute and to publish it. I have given verbatim extracts of such parts of it as relate to bimetallism, which are now for the first time made public, and they are of divisive weight in the present discussion. It will be seen that the Indian government, being plagued and tormented by the multitude of gold and silver coins, 994 in number, circulating in India of different weights and fineness, attempted to establish bimetallism in India in 1766. But the attempt wholly failed. And having had ample experience of bimetallism in all its forms, denounced and renounced it in all its woes, and declared its adoption of monometallism. Most unfortunately, when they had the choice of either metal, they adopted silver exclusively and totally demonetized gold, which has been the cause of all our present troubles. It will be seen that the illustrious authorities I have cited, with the ample experience of centuries before them, have unanimously demonstrated that it is the relative market value of the metals which governs the relative value of the coins, and not the reverse, as the bimetallists assert. The fixed legal ratio of the coins never had the least effect on the market value of the metals. During all this long period of time, not a single person supported the doctrine now maintained by the bimetallists. It was demonstrated by the inexorable logic of facts and incontrovertible arguments that the worst form of currency in circulation regulates the value of the whole and drives all other forms out of circulation. This great fundamental law of the coinage is just as firmly established as the law of gravitation. It is absolutely universal. It is not limited in time or space. It is true through however large an area it operates. When therefore the bimetallists assert that the law, which has been found to hold good in all ages and in every single and separate state, can be set aside and overruled by an international agreement, it is just as rational to say that if all single states cannot set aside the law of gravitation, an international agreement can do so. Or to say that if any number of single states cannot regulate the course of the moon, an international agreement can do so. But to determine all the issues raised by the bimetallists, but to determine all the issues raised by the bimetallists, much wider considerations are necessary. The rock upon which the bimetallists and other persons who chatter about the currency founder is that they consider gold and silver only to be the currency or circulating medium of the world and the measure of prices. But the currency or circulating medium consists not only of specie, gold, silver, and copper, but also of credit in all its forms, both written and unwritten. The bimetallists persistently assert that the commercial malaise which prevails throughout the world at the present time is due to the scarcity and appreciation, as they are pleased to term it, by which they mean the rise of the value of gold. They attribute this to the demonetization of silver, and they allege that this fall in the value of a certain number of commodities is due to the fact that gold has to do double duty. They allege that if gold and silver were coined by unlimited quantities at a fixed legal ratio, it would increase the currency or circulating medium of the world. Now, in the first place, no country, whatever has demonetized silver, all they have done is to restrict its quantity. In the second place, the history of the coinage in different countries proves that in no country whatever did gold and silver ever circulate together in unlimited quantities at a fixed legal ratio, but they alternatively drove each other out of circulation, as one or the other was overrated or underrated by the fixed legal ratio. And it is a pure delusion to suppose that coining gold and silver in unlimited quantities at a fixed legal ratio would augment the currency of the world. All these assertions are the coinage of the vain imagination of the bimetallists, arising from their neglecting to study the history of the coinage in different countries and their ignorance of the rudimentary laws of economics. In the next place, they totally omit the consideration of what they might see in any treatise on economics, that rights of action, credits, or debts have exactly the same effects on production and prices as an equal quantity of gold. In this treatise, we have written a complete exposition of the juridical and scientific principles of credit, and the organization and mechanism of the colossal system of credit, both mercantile and banking. And to apprehend the subject of bimetallism, it is necessary to consider it in combination with a system of credit. The fact is, we have long passed through the ages of gold and silver. We are now in the age of credit or paper. Gold and silver are only now used in the small daily and retail transactions to serve as pocket money. All operations in commerce and trade are now carried on by means of rights of action, credits, or debts. And the only use of gold now in commerce is for the banks to keep such strong reserves of gold as to inspire the public with confidence that they can pay their credits at any moment on demand. I have shown that credits or circulating debts now constitute 99% of the currency in this and other great mercantile countries. To treat of the question of the currency or circulating medium or the measure of prices at the present day, and to include only gold and silver under such title, and to leave out all consideration of the colossal system of credit is just as irrational as it would be to write a general treatise on mathematics, and to leave out all mention of the differential calculus and its developments, or to write a treatise on the conveyances of the present day, and to include only pack horses, stage coaches, and stage wagons, and to omit all mention of canals, railroads, and steamers, or to write a treatise on machines and to leave out all mention of the steam engine. In fact, banking credits are now, for all practical purposes, the current coin of the realm. And to show what a mass of banking credits may be built on a very slender basis of specie, we may take the example of dear old Scotland because it has the best organized system of banking in the world. It appears by the last official accounts that with a reserve of gold, or in pounds, 4,866,511, the Scottish banks are able to support banking credits in the amount of, in pounds, 92,240,356. These 92 millions of banking credits have exactly the same effects in all respects as an equal quantity of gold. And when, by a well-organized system of banking, it is found possible for all practical purposes to multiply less than 5 millions of gold into more than 92 millions, what becomes of the baseless cry of the bimetallists of the scarcity and any appreciation of gold? If anyone wishes to comprehend the marvelous powers of a well-organized system of banking, let him study the mechanism of the banking system of Scotland given in this work, and he will then see the force of the aphorism of Demosthenes. If you were ignorant of this, that credit is the greatest capital of all towards the acquisition of wealth, you would be utterly ignorant. And of the aphorism of Daniel Webster, credit has done more 1,000 times to enrich nations than all the mines of the world. Thus all the assertions of the bimetallists are melted into thin air, leaving not a rack behind. Bimetallists complain that they never can get monometallists to answer their facts and arguments. The answer is very simple. They never do adduce any real facts or arguments. Monometallists may have a vague general idea that their system is the right one, but very few have any real knowledge of the historical facts and the arguments based on these facts, upon which the system of monometallism is founded. I have given in this chapter a succinct but sufficiently full statement of the facts and arguments upon which monometallism is founded, and by which monometallists must defend it, and also to show bimetallists the facts and arguments which they have to assail, controvert, and overthrow, if they can, before they are entitled to a hearing. The following selection of works contains the historical facts of the case. Rooting, Annals of the Coinage of England, 3 volumes, London, 1840. Leblanc, Trait historique des moines de France, Paris, 1692. Saint-Maur, Essai sur les moines, Paris, 1746. De Brazenhan, Trait des moines, Paris, 1764. An abstract of these works is given in MacLeod's Dictionary of Political Economy, London, 1862. The history of the coinage of India, the history of inconvertible paper money in numerous countries. Chalmers, History of the Colonial Currencies, London, 1893. With numerous other works on the coinage of other countries, a volante. As for incontrovertible arguments founded on these facts, the following may be selected. Oresme, Traité de la première invertor des moines, about 1366. Copernicus, Monet Coudon Ratio, 1526. Sir Thomas Gresham, Letter to Queen Elizabeth, 1560. Sir William Petty, Political Anatomy of Ireland, 1691. Locke, Considerations Concerning the Raising of the Value of Money, 1692. A reply to the defense of the bank, setting forth the unreasonableness of their slow payments, London, 1696. Harris on Coins, about 1750. Sir James Stewart, The Principles of Money Applied to the Present State of the Coin of Bengal, 1772. Lord Liverpool, Treatise on the Coins of the Realm, 1805. Minute of the Governor General of India in Council, 1806, given in this work. Speech of Mr. Wellesley Pole, Master of the Mint, on introducing the resolutions in the House of Commons on which our present system of coinage is founded, 1816, Parliamentary Debates, volume XXXIV, column 860. Debate on bimetallism in the House of Commons, 1830, Parliamentary Debates, NS, volume XXV, column 101. Dispatch of Sir Charles Wood, Secretary of State for India, to the Government of India, September 1864. Besides innumerable other tracts and speakers, a volante. These are a sufficient selection of works containing the historical facts and incontrovertible arguments upon which our present system of coinage is founded. Let the bimetallists retire to their studies, read, learn, and mark, and inwardly digest the above works, and consider what answer they can give to them. Until they have done that, they should be silent. There is only one way by which this vast and wearisome controversy can be brought to a satisfactory conclusion. It is not to be decided by cheering mobs or the votes of popular assemblies like the House of Commons. For better or worse, for better or for worse, we are in the democracy in politics. But in a merciful providence preserve us from democracy in science. Where would our sublime system of astronomy or the beautiful mathematical theory of light be if they had to be submitted to the judgment of the yokels of Cambridgeshire? Let a royal commission be appointed, composed exclusively of law lords and bankers and merchants of the highest sagacity and experience, forming a strictly judicial tribunal. Let the bimetallists, as being the assailing party, appear before it and be required to prove all their allegations and assertions by strictly legal and historical evidence, on every point of which there exist vast masses of indubitable evidence, which are readily available. When the bimetallists are called upon to substantiate their allegations and assertions before such a tribunal, they will find themselves very much in the case of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when cast bound into the burning, fiery furnace. But they will not escape so easily as those young gentlemen did. Under the fierce light of strict legal cross-examination, they will find that all their gaseous assertions have infinitely less substance in them than the most attenuated comet that ever visited the solar system. Why should bimetallism in the 19th century produce results in any way different from those it has produced in all preceding ages? All descriptions of the commercial depression, which at present indubitably prevails throughout the world, must be entirely excluded from consideration. The sole question is whether the remedy which the bimetallists propose is possible, and whether it would do anything to alleviate that depression. The sole question is whether it is the fixed legal ratio of the coins which governs the relative value of the metals in bullion, or is it the relative value of the metals in bullion which governs the relative value of the coins? And when the question is reduced to this single definite issue, there are mountains and mountains of evidence, not only Osa piled upon Pelion, but the Himalayas piled upon them in favor of the monometallic system. Whereas there is not the faintest shadow of the shade of the ghost of the nth differential coefficient of a pin's point of evidence in favor of the contention of the bimetallists. It is absolute zero. The evidence of history and the arguments of a series of the most illustrious men for 5 centuries are perfectly clear, unanimous, and devices of the fact that it is the relative market value of the metals which governs the relative value of the coins, and not the reverse, as the bimetallists allege. During all this long period, there is not a single person who held the present doctrine of the bimetallists. The evidence against it from practical experience was too overwhelming. The bimetallists assert that fixing a legal ratio between gold and silver by international agreement would establish a stable exchange between England and India, but as shown in Chapter X, or 10, paragraph 3, it was proved before a committee of the House of Lords that it is impossible to have a fixed par of exchange between countries which use different metals as their standard unit. All the assertions of the bimetallists are the coinage of their own vain imagination. And when the delusive mirage of visionary dreams of boundless prosperity to follow the adoption of their system, propagated by the bimetallists, is scrutinized by the all-seeing eye of knowledge, it will be found that the hideous reality is national bankruptcy. If the bimetallists were entrusted with the reins of national economical policy, they would surely and swiftly produce such a catastrophe as Phaethon did when he tried to guide the courses of the sun. The coursers of the sun. The bimetallists may rest assured that the monometallic Jericho is an impregnable fortress whose walls will never fall before the blare of the bimetallic trumpets. Blare they ever so wild and loud and long. To all persons, and they are many, who have neither time nor inclination to enter into all the mazes of the vast and intricate controversy, I would offer the following broad general considerations. The assertion of the bimetallists that it is possible to regulate the relative value of gold and silver by international agreement is flatly contradicted by 1. The history of bimetallism in every country, 2. The unanimous arguments of the Arisme, Copernicus, Gresham, Petty, Locke, Newton, Harris, Sir James Stuart, Lord Liverpool, the government of India, the British government, and hosts of other experienced persons who had the consequences of bimetallism before their eyes. 3. That no country has it ever been found possible to maintain gold and silver in circulation is unlimited quantities at a fixed legal ratio, but that after attempting to maintain bimetallism for centuries, every state in Europe has been obliged to abandon it as impractical and injurious. That the circumstances of the present times are totally different from what they were when it was attempted to maintain bimetallism. That Mr. Harries, Mr. Huskisson, and Sir Robert Peel declared that the attempt to reintroduce bimetallism under our present circumstances would instantly lead to a national bankruptcy. 6. That, as I have shown, France, with her internal currency consisting exclusively of silver, cannot adopt bimetallism at any ratio, under the penalty of instant bankruptcy and ruin. That at once precludes France from listening to any scheme of bimetallism. And if France cannot join, what becomes of the hopes of the bimetallists? If the bimetallists were to propose to cut every sovereign in half and to debase every sovereign with 50% of alloy, and to compel every creditor to accept such half sovereign or debased sovereign as £1 in the payment of the debt, that would be too manifest a fraud to impose upon the most stolid Philistine. Nevertheless, they propose to do the very same thing by a circumbendibus. They propose to take 20s in silver, which are at present worth less than 10s in gold, to declare them equal in value to 20s in gold or £1, and to compel every creditor to accept these 20s in silver at the value of a gold pound. Such a transparent jungle would not impose upon the dullest school board urchin in the dullest school board in the kingdom. In plain English, the proposal of the bimetallist is simply to debase the currency by more than 50%. I should hope that these considerations, stated in plain terms, would be sufficient to induce all intelligent persons rigorously to close their ears to the pipings of the sirens of bimetallism. pipe they ever so sweetly. And now the last crushing blow has fallen upon the bimetallists. The German agriculturalists, deluded by the idea that bimetallism would raise the price of corn, worried the government into appointing a commission on the subject. And the commission have agreed that the price of silver cannot be raised by international agreement. So vanished the last flickering hopes of the bimetallists. Nevertheless, let not the bimetallists relax their energies, lest them only change the direction of their efforts. Let them at once and forever abandon their visionary chimera that things can be made equal by some words printed in a book, which are by nature unequal. Let them give up their vain delusion that an international agreement can make 6 equal to 12. Let them cease from their vain objurgations, which can no more alter the laws of nature than the ripple of the summer sea can wash away Ailsa Craig. Let them unite their forces, heart and soul, with those who are urging the governments to complete their work and to satisfy the universal demand of India for the restoration of the gold standard in currency, with a subsidiary currency of silver modeled on such of the European systems as the wisest and most experienced experts may deem most suitable for the circumstances of India. Let them be assured there is no possibility of bringing about a stability of exchange between England and India until the two countries have a common standard unit. And there never can be monetary peace in India till the gold sovereign is made the standard unit throughout the whole British Empire. Henry Dunning MacLeod.